Hello, America. Welcome to the Junto Podcast, where we promote the practical applications of critical thinking and bold creativity. I'm your host, Edgar Mills. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back, good people. Thanks for being with me for 56 episodes. So, what am I talking about today? What's the topic? Well, narcissism and false humility. And sort of as it relates to leadership, yeah, but just in general. But we're going to hit on how it affects leadership as well. Those two things, well, narcissism, well, specifically false humility, right? They kind of creep in underneath our defenses, right? Using, charisma and some modesty, false modesty. And it fools us into, admiring these types of people. But usually the fact is that these are the people who are chasing that admiration. And they want to control the narrative. They want to control you and their image and whatever else. And a true narcissist, they will do those things at the expense of everyone else. Leaders who use tactics like false humility, they only care about themselves. They're prioritizing their own image and their own sort of power base, and it's not genuine. They're not servant leaders at all. They may not even really care about results of a team results as long as they look good. And they genuinely it is genuine that they want and need people to admire them and follow them or fear them or respect them, whatever they're trying to get out of it, so that they can be the center of attention. Now, genuine humility looks way different than that, doesn't it? From a Christian point of view, like humility, that's the honest view of yourself as you stand before God. You can lie to everybody else, but you can't lie to God. That's genuine humility, right? What do I look like to God? And then consider that on how you look to other people. And that's genuine. And again, folks, throughout this, I'm going to refer to things from my personal Christian view. And I'm not speaking for Christianity because I don't have that authority at all, but my personal Christian view. And then a sort of libertarian, sort of objectivism view, or objective. And I've introduced subjectivism to you that don't know about it before, but that false humility don't jive with objectivism or libertarianism because it's in the phrase false. It's not truthful. Yeah, it's false. It lacks. You can't have genuine voluntary interaction with lies because everybody else is being hoodwinked. So we're going to try to examine that stuff today in a little detail. Try to figure out how to spot these folks who use false humility as a tactic, man, as a tool. And it's one of the I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, but people who use false humility for personal gain it asses me up a lot. And we're going to talk about some narcissistic type people. I mean, usually, I don't know. So, no, well, let me just slow down a minute. What we want to be able to do is spot red flags and try to spot these people who are, narcissists usually, they get over only so long and people recognize it, right? If it's especially very super toxic. But if they're more clever, then it's harder to spot them. So we're going to look for red flags. We're going to try to figure out the psychology of it all, why they are the way that they are. Yeah. And then, how can we avoid that stuff? False humility, it's deceptive. It's false. It's fake. It's not real. It's insincere. And what these people use that, and it's just a false show of modesty, and it hides whatever their manipulation really is, or there's or they're self-promoting while trying to sort of self-deprecate. They do a little bit of the false humility to get praise, to get adoration or validation. And the false humility cleverly hides the arrogance and or deep insecurities as it's pulling this praise out of these people. Because, insecurity, if you got people telling you how awesome you are, that feeds, that helps comfort that insecurity a little bit, but it's only temporary. And this false humility, and you pulling out this false praise or this surface level praise, meanwhile, you're dodging accountability for your true self. And people who use this tactic of false humility, that they'll present themselves as a humble warrior. There's a million vet bros out there that they're the humble warrior. They're the reluctant hero. Or they'll present themselves as regular guys, just like you, when in fact they feel or want to be superior to you. Or they'll present themselves as a servant to the people, right? Or and all the while it's just a ploy to stroke their ego. And false humility, it's a tool, and it's a favorite tool of the narcissist leaders who use it to, sort of curtail the criticism before they ever actually get the criticism. You know what I mean? They try to put them in a place that's sort of, it's false, right? But they try to set themselves up so that to avoid the true criticism of negative outcomes or whatever else from a leadership perspective. So, how can we spot when somebody... Now, look, there are genuinely humble people out there, millions by the millions, doing genuinely good things. And when they present themselves as a humble warrior, they are that. I'm talking about the narcissist out there, the egotistic, self-promoting. That's who I'm talking about. And they may use this false humility in a way, like they may be complimentary. They may compliment you, but is it genuine though? They may compliment you in order to sort of get you on their team. All the while, it's just surface level. It's fake. They don't even care, or they don't even really know. And then I stumbled upon a word while I was sort of researching this. Humble brag. You guys heard that? They humble brag. They'll talk it. They'll bring some kind of achievement and sort of bring it in sideways and downplay it, but just enough to where it spotlights them as the hero. Yeah, man. Humble brag. And I've got a couple war stories that I like to tell. One particular was like a 9-hour firefight. It's not humble bragging. It's I just tell the story. I wasn't the hero of the story. You know what I mean? I don't know. It humble brag. I like that word because as I define it and looked at it, I was like, oh my God. And I can think back to just scores of dudes who do that on a regular basis. So yeah, they might do some humble bragging where they downplay something that's noteworthy even, but they downplay it. Oh, well, I didn't really. And then the spotlight kind of goes on to them, and they're like, well, I just did what it was, just doing my job and all that. And that's great. So, or they might do a little selective listening, right? They look like they're listening to you, and it makes them look like they're open to what you have to say, or that your ideas or your new ideas. But in their mind, it's already shut down. They're not hearing what you're saying. They're just allowing you to speak. Yeah. And then if it comes down to something that's like real conversation where they may be being challenged even, nope, they're not hearing that. They just shut it down, redirect, move on. And then along with the humble bragging, this is another sort of flavor of that, is that these guys might do a lot of excessive self-deprecation in order to, get the feedback to people. So I suck at this. Oh no, man, you're awesome. You did this and you did that. Do you see what I mean? Getting that praise, that fishing for the praise, instead of it being like honest self-deprecation. Because there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with that. But to do it as a tactic, or to do it excessively to where that's what it seems like is a tactic, then you're like, okay, all right, guy, that's enough. You know what I mean? But that's a trait. That's a flag. That's a red flag. So look out for those, man. What else? What else do dudes who use false humility, narcissistic dudes who use what are some other things? They might, well, they kind of hijack your conversation, right? And they've got their story somehow is always one-ups yours, but it's in a way that they're self-deprecating, but they sort of take over the narrative. Or as a leader, and when there's opportunities to, like like if your crew volunteers to do something for the homeless or whatever, and they take over, and then they kind of like, the spotlight's on them for, oh, well, I just thought it was the right thing to do. And so it comes back on them as the person who set it up, and the person who did all, and everybody else who helped in that don't really get any. So there's all kind of ways that they do this. But the fact of the matter, and worst of all, is that most of these people, there's an old term out there called two-faced. Most of these people are, in fact, two-faced, especially the really, truly, deeply narcissistic ones. So they look one way in public, or on the podcast, or whatever, modest and humble and just exceedingly competent. They're just naturally competent and good at everything. But in private, they have a feeling of superiority. And they're very one-on-one. They're very dismissive of any other people's issues or problems or accomplishments even. And that's the worst, man. These two, anyway. So anyway, all those are pretty solid red flags that show us that somebody's not truly humble, but using humility as a weapon. Yeah, using it as a weapon. And I don't like it. Personally, I don't like it. Narcissism, as a leader and leadership, whatever it is, whether it's a business or a church or whatever, and you're the leader and you've got all this charisma, and you're good looking and articulate and clever on screen or on the mic. And you've got all these little funny anecdotes, and you're just wrapped in frickin' unshakable confidence, and you're just charming as hell. But inside, these leaders, they're chasing this adoration, either from their workers, their congregation, their followers. They require endless adoration, and they require that they be in control, and they subversively demand personal glory, personal gain. And that's unsat, man. And these people, these narcissistic leaders, they put their own image, their own gain, their own power, their own legacy above the mission of the company or church or whatever, and especially above the people that follow them. Well, that's contrary to good leadership for sure. And I think, generally speaking, everyone agrees that narcissism is bad, right? Everybody does. That's a universally bad trait. But what about these dudes out there that are narcissists and don't acknowledge it? They won't acknowledge it, by the way. These leaders who are narcissists, everything is a sort of a weapon of influence. That's it. They weaponize and hide behind false humility and use it as a weapon to influence people to do what they want them to do. You can do that in a genuine way. There's nothing wrong with being influential and being able to convince people to do what you want them to do. That's leadership. There's nothing wrong with it. But when it's based on a false premise or false foundation or false humility, then it's no bueno. It ain't going to last. It can't last. They use this disingenuous sort of modesty to lower your guard. And once your guard is lowered, because believe me, they're fully aware when your guard is down. And then once your guard is down, then they can manipulate and exploit as they choose. And they might even show a little bit of their ugliness after that. Healthy leaders are absolutely the opposite of that. You have a heart of a servant. You work for your people work for you, and you work for your people in turn. And you have honest interactions. And when you have honest interactions, then you can get voluntary consent and you can work for mutual benefit. But the honesty is absolutely required for the voluntary consent, for the voluntary interactions. The honesty is absolutely crucial for that. Otherwise, you're building on a false foundation. And there's nothing wrong as a leader. And when we're talking about opposite of narcissism right now, there's nothing wrong as a leader to be proud of accomplishments. Yeah. And if somebody on your team did something great that was for the benefit of the team, acknowledge that person did something great and that it might not have even happened without them. Acknowledge it. Tell them. On the other hand, narcissists, they flip the script on that. They'll take full responsibility for any good thing to have, even if they barely had a hand in it whatsoever. And they will minimize everyone else's contributions. Yeah, man. It's toxic. Narcissism is toxic. And false humility is a tool. Narcissism is a trait, a characteristic, a character trait. Whether it comes natural, I don't know, through friggin' genes or through learned behavior, whatever. And then false humility it's a tactic. But you can, like I said, narcissists show themselves sooner or later. It takes a while. Some of them are more clever than others. But anybody that is always fishing for praise, constant praise, and anybody who's constantly taking credit for everything good, but not taking credit for anything bad. So here's a catchphrase from the military, and it's not a catchphrase. I mean, I think it's pretty much in doctrine. You are responsible as the leader, right? And I think this is in the job description of a detachment leader, a captain, right? A team leader. You are responsible for everything the team does or fails to do. Yeah. You have that responsibility. You don't do everything or fail to do everything, but you're responsible for everything overall. Give credit where credit is due. And then if something goes wrong, well, take the hit. You take it as a leader. Now, see, this is where being a good leader versus you take the hit, you accept it, and then that's it. And then your people, they'll know. And then you go and like, look, we dropped the ball. Here's where I missed. And then everybody kind of examine themselves where they missed. And then, okay, fix it and then drive on. But narcissistic leaders won't do that. They will shift blame immediately. Narcissists show zero empathy. Yeah. And they treat other people. You might have, maybe you might have a dude whose wife was cheating on him and just called him on Mother's Day and said, hey, I have something I have to tell you. While you're deployed, and this dude becomes a nervous wreck. A shitty leader will just completely blow that off, and they treat other people's needs as weakness or just an inconvenience. That's, you have to acknowledge, you have to have some empathy. You have to acknowledge that, like, yeah, look, here, I see you're hurting. I see you're distracted. I understand. Help lay out a path, man, and then help them pull them back up. But a narcissist won't do that. Now, lacking empathy, yeah. But once again, I said some narcissists are clever and they'll use charm. Yeah, they'll use charm to bend you up. Or gaslighting. They'll set you up to be like, to think everything, somehow make you believe that you're at fault for all this and that. Or what's another tactic? Oh man, like turning your own teammates against each other. So that way you can be a sounding board for both of them, but you feed them little false or just manipulated information. So that keeps you're the rock solid. You're the rock in this little drama, and they're constantly coming to you for guidance, and you're keeping the whole thing. Yeah, manipulating people and putting them against each other. That's some narcissistic behavior right there. Be aware of it. And if you see it once, always be on the lookout for it and identify. Now, some narcissists, what about a sense of entitlement? Yeah, most people who are narcissistic, they believe that they are entitled to all this respect and all this special treatment and they are entitled to go around the rules that everybody else has to go because they are special. I got a very big problem with entitlement, the word entitlement. People, no one is entitled to anything except being treated with good manners. You're not entitled to any special treatment or worse treatment, by the way. I mean, like, yeah, even Steven across the board, everybody on the same playing field. That's the entitlement. Everybody's on the same playing field. Beyond that, there is no entitlement. You earn your way. You earn the good things, true enough, and you earn the bad things. But nobody is beholden to tiptoe around you. Some narcissists, now some of you, as I say this, you may think, oh, President Trump fits that. They'll exaggerate their accomplishments. They'll exaggerate the goodness they've done in whatever field. And as a leader, they'll surround themselves not based on merit, not with people who will give the right answer, but the yes men, right? The people who will, and they live in their echo chamber to just reinforce their own sense of superiority. Yeah. That probably sounds like most politicians, if you ask me. And yeah, narcissists, they love to use the tool, the false humility as a tool. A little bit of strategic self-deprecation in public. Get a little bit of praise. Oh, look how humble and how real he is, how genuine he is. And then in private, they will turn on you like a pit viper. All in service to their own ego. All in service to their own ego. At the direct expense of you. At the expense of their own integrity, if they ever had any. And even at the expense of positive results, like from a workplace, team results. Yeah, man. Narcissist. It's bad. Everybody knows it. We agree. I'm sure. Unless you're a narcissist. Now, look, I'm not going to name names here, but I'm thinking of a couple people right now who I know to be narcissist. And it hurts me. And it hurts me, man. Not to, well, successful, like I'm successful dudes. And the arrogance just seeps out of every sentence. The arrogance just seeps into every video, everything that they do. And I see it, and it hurts. And it hurts because there's, right. I don't know these dudes' lives in and out, but they're very successful dudes. They're doing well and apparently being rewarded. So I don't know God's plan, right? So it just makes me just cringe a little when I hear these dudes. Then I hear about some things these dudes have done in private, and I think, God, how is that? Why? Because it seems so unnecessary to regular people. Those tactics and that toxicity seems so unnecessary when you can just have genuine conversations. But they can't have a genuine conversation because if it doesn't go their way, they can't live with it. They can't stand it. They can't stand it. They can't be, well, wrong for sure, but they can't be contradicted in whatever their way is. And it's just so damn sad. And it angers a little bit. I try to be slow to anger these days, but it does a little bit. Now where does this come from? Where does this narcissism come from? God, it could be anything. You guys know, I say it all the time, and it's not self-deprecating. I am not educated as a formal, whatever. But I always say I fancy myself a junior psychologist. I'm always reading about psychology and things like that. And so what are some common roots of this behavior? Well, some of them have an inferiority complex deep down inside. Now, I've written papers about the Dunning-Kruger, the imposter syndrome. There's a lot of dudes out there that have that sort of imposter syndrome in themselves. But then that kind of morphs into an inferiority complex that's unhealthy. So then they got to, because it eats at them, so they got to hide it. And then they kind of mask it with superiority to keep their ego happy. And then the fake modesty, so they can pull in that adoration and those compliments without taking any real responsibility or having done fully the things that they needed to do to earn that. And then this sort of, well, I say it's covert narcissism because nobody is going to come out, no dude is going to come out and go, yeah, I'm a narcissist, right? But it protects their image. They're trying to put a shell around their image and that they can shape however they want. So yeah, the self-deprecation, and then maybe even some victim stories, right? I talk about being young and coming up on the low end of the economic spectrum, and there's some stories where I feel like I was probably done wrong. I don't do that to garner any sympathy. I'm just telling you what shaped my life, right? But these dudes will use things like that to manipulate sympathy and to control you. And of course, everything goes back to childhood, doesn't it? Maybe you came up in a household where, well, you were unsupervised, perhaps. I was unsupervised. I don't necessarily think that leads to narcissism. But what about if you come up in a household that there's a very sort of conditional love amongst the family members? Like you got to kind of earn your love around. So then you got to try to do the things to get the love. And so instead of it being genuine, it becomes manipulative. Or sort of being spoiled, right? A sense of entitlement as a youth where you get all this praise and, oh, you're a great boy. You're awesome. But there's zero accountability. You get to throw tantrums, as a youth and then just go get a prize and go get ice cream and be done with it. There's no accountability for that. What about that? Being a spoiled child. I think more so on that end of the spectrum than on the low end of the spectrum is where narcissism comes from. I think if we did a nationwide survey and like a really true and honest one, I think that's the way that would shake out. Or what about just parents kind of being fucked up and like their messaging is, so if you show genuine, I don't know, confidence or just genuine curiosity or anything, and then you get punished for that, right? And that's muddled up signals from your parents. And so that might cause you to go into this sort of narcissistic and then you pull a shell around you that I'm great and I have to manipulate people to do what I want. Everything goes back to childhood, I think, to a degree. Now, I've always said this. At some point, and it's not 18 either, by the way, but at some point in your young teenhood, you are fully aware and capable of making, well, maybe not mature decisions, but definitely thoughtful decisions. Definitely thoughtful decisions. Yeah, I believe that too. So, yeah, it all goes back to childhood to a degree. And a lot of the trauma comes from parents or family members or being brought up in just a generally toxic environment. And then you might have some attachment to some of that trauma, some of that unresolved trauma for sure, so you never learned how to correctly get through that stuff. So now you're just sort of perpetuating a cycle. And at some point, all that culminates as an adult. And if you've worked your way through to a degree of success and now you just look at people, they're either a tool or they're a threat. That's it. That's the way you look at people. And that's unhealthy. That's sad. Yeah. And all that, from a Christian perspective, I think, pride is a sin, right? I think there's levels of pride. Like, yeah, when I do a good thing, I'm proud of it, right? If I paint a pretty good picture and I feel a little proud, man, I'm nice. I'm happy with it. I'm proud of it. But we know that the sinful pride, where you put yourself and your image ahead of God or Jesus or God's authority, and you're worshiping yourself instead of God. Now that's, from a Christian perspective, yeah, I'm talking about childhood and this and that and the other. All that builds up. But really, ultimately, that's pride is that narcissism is how that shakes out, I think. It's a dangerous and toxic pride that you are above all. Yeah. And you're not. That's it. I'm not a biblical scholar, folks. I'm not anything when it comes to Christianity. I'm just giving you my own perspective as I think I'm a Christian. You're not above God. Yeah, man. Narcissism is not grounded in a reality in reality, we can build rational sort of, self-esteem through our own efforts. We can build connections with other people with empathy and build teams. And then we can cooperate amongst each other voluntarily, honestly, and avoid all the coercion and all the lies. We can do that. But narcissism is not based in that reality. Now, there's been maybe millions of relationships destroyed through toxic husband or woman. Well, look, women can be toxic, narcissists. I'm speaking about humans here. I may say dudes a lot because I'm a dude. But And you can call that, we can still stay on leadership here, like with that. As a man, you're the de facto leader of your family. Now, if you're a feminist, you're not going to like that. But look, there's lesbian narcissists. There's gay narcissists. So look, this applies to everybody. But generally speaking, especially from a Christian perspective, the man is the leader of the house. So you're still in a leadership position. And that narcissism will destroy personal relationships, destroy them. And the problem is they'll get destroyed, but the victims of that will stay in it because they think somehow they can change you, or that it's just a phase and there's something's wrong and it can be fixed. Nope, that ain't it at all. Possibly, but like through God, like through friggin' therapy and things like that, like active steps to, one, recognize it and then fix it, right? But that in a family setting or in a personal relationships, it just builds resentment, man. And when somebody knows they're being manipulated and they voluntarily stay with it because they think they can fix, but at some point they realize that they're only being used, whether it's for psychological or emotional purposes or physical purposes or whatever, they're just being used. And that'll destroy personal relationships. And if you have been in a relationship with someone like this, I mean, think back to the interactions, right? They're shallow, right? They're surface level conversations, unless something's wrong, and then they start getting the blame game. And there's no real, you're not really communicating. There's no real engagement there. Everybody's just kind of empty, sitting around in each other's presence. Well, especially in a family setting, right? You have to have a little bit of vulnerability with your family, with your spouse, with your kids even. But you cannot be vulnerable with a narcissist. They will use that. They will weaponize it and use it against you. And that's a lot. You see that a lot with divorces. They can't be vulnerable. They can't be 100% honest with each other because the other will weaponize it. And it might be years later, man, but it happens. And a narcissist, even with family members, they break people up into into little groups, right? You're either somebody they can use for their own ends, or you're somebody who will challenge them so they'll cut you, ignore you. You're either with me or you're against me. And I always say this, folks, on all the podcasts, those extremes, those absolutes, they're no good, man. The world is not made up like that. That's not the way it works. The absolutes do not work. And people who they do look at as useful, then they end up getting just run ragged, man, burned out. They're doing the bidding of the narcissist, and they're getting burned out. They have no self-esteem. They doubt their own, personalities or their own desires. Because the narcissist told them that they were shit. And this is abuse. Really, it's abuse. It's emotional abuse. And in the Christian world, you're meant to consider others better than yourselves. And you can't do that if you think you're the center of attention, if you think you're the Messiah. And on the libertarian end of that, all this narcissism is a low-key violation of the non-aggression principle. Because even though you may not be physically aggressive, you're emotionally aggressive, controlling and manipulating. And that's no bueno, man. No bueno. It's still aggression. It may be verbal. It may be subtle even. But it's still aggression. You're still taking something away from your victims, the people who have to live around this narcissism. What about professionally? Have any of you ever worked with someone who is a narcissist, like a true narcissist. Team can't hold up. Okay, never mind a team that you worked with someone, but a leader, a narcissistic leader who preaches humility and integrity, but they're secretly arrogant and superior, and they say all the right things because they know the right things to say, but there's an agenda. They hold an agenda. Yeah. And then you look like you're not on board with them in any way whatsoever, and then it's a campaign to destroy your character, your decision making, your experience. Yeah, I know somebody like that. And a team, the morale, be gone. Because dudes who put out, and they got a narcissistic leader, dudes who put out, then they get casually dismissed, or their hard work kind of gets exploited to make this particular leader look like a superhero. Good people leave that environment, folks. They start looking for other avenues. And then when the good people leave, especially in a commercial business, when the good people leave, then your innovation dies, and you get in this point of no progress, because every innovative idea, if it don't pump up the boss's ego first, then it gets dismissed. And so any long-term sort of process gets cut off, and now it's just short-term. How does this make me look now? You know what I mean? And in media, in this social media influencer culture, in politics, these high vis roles, good people, the mask eventually slips and people get a glimpse. Yep, they get a glimpse. And when they do, it's going to go downhill from there. And this mask is just that. It's a mask to hide something. It's a fraud. And fraud distorts free markets of ideas and free markets of involuntary association and everything else. Excuse me, God dang. Anytime there's a mask that the truth is hidden, it's a distortion. Oh man. Now I said, I'm not going to name names, but there's a couple examples out there that you see on the social medias, right? And one of the big ones is you got some of these vet bros that have built a brand on being a humble warrior, a sheepdog, a protector, and then they casually overstate their, accomplishments or kills or whatever it is. They casually overstate that, or they may hint at have worked with XYZ, just when they've eaten at the same chow hall together, but not really. And they allow people to believe the mystique, and they build their brand on the mystique. And they go on all the podcasts and all the TV shows and the video, the big popular ones, and they ghostwrite books, and they got sponsors coming out the ass, making money hand over fist. And then you see some genuine vet bros going, what the F? So they expose some of the inconsistencies to the world. Then it creates, it has created a big. And then instead of owning it, right, then they lean harder into the deflection and the little backpedaling corrections. And then they kind of try to shape themselves as a victim. Creates big scandals and gets a lot of hits on the YouTubes and whatnot. There's one guy out there, a fitness dude who, I don't think he made up the story. He made up the fact that he was there when he was not physically there. And he may have even made the story up, but about wounds sustained in battle that were not sustained in battle. Yeah. So for those two instances, I mean, there's been claims of stolen valor, and you're like, well, they did serve, and and both of those guys have done impressive things. So why lie? Or why embellish? Well, possibly a little bit of narcissism there, right? Possibly. Or especially on YouTube, you got tons of you got a bunch of arrogant fucking gun tubers who are happy to belittle. They bring themselves off as just a regular guy, just informing the public about this and that and the other. And then we're going to go back to the word humble brag, and they do all this humble bragging about their knowledge and all the various, gear and all their skills, and then they get criticized, and it creates little wars, and they're essentially chasing clicks over, genuine presentations. And they make money off it because of the clicks, so it's a little disingenuous. But because the criticism turns them into that's narcissistic responses to genuine criticism and concern. Like, hey, what about this? What about that? So you never know now, even in the gun community, because the gun community is growing so exponentially. I mean, getting more diverse. I mean, who can you trust? Who is genuine? Who? These are real world examples of narcissism just in the spotlight. And then I would be remiss, good people, if I didn't mention unscrupulous, greasy politicians. And I'll go ahead and say, and I'll give you the example that you can put this in the dictionary under narcissist. Gavin Newsom. You want to say Trump? I know you do. Gavin Newsom is an overt narcissist, and he uses the Democrat playbook and will lie square to your face, and constantly going on about this collective sacrifice that we all must make. And that dude hasn't sacrificed. He don't know what the word means. Never mind his, going around to luxury restaurants during his own imposed COVID lockdowns and all that shit. Or banging his best friend's wife. And then he comes out with these performative, half-assed apologies. And then didn't even start a podcast or something. And he always frames himself up as just, a humble servant, a visionary for the people. That guy, oh man, that is the definition. If you want to see celebrity narcissist, it's Gavin Newsom. And hell, man, just go watch any video clip of that guy. He reeks of arrogance. Oh. Or when he was on with who was he on with? It was like a black journalist or on a black show. And he was like, oh, I can't read. I barely graduated this and that and the other. trying to connect. Oh my God, man. What a manipulative piece of crap. All right. I keep bringing up, from a Christian, my Christian perspective, libertarian perspective. That's my libertarian perspective. But false humility and narcissism in leadership, especially, is not in line with any libertarian ideal whatsoever. Because anytime there is any manipulation at all, you've lost any possibility of voluntary consent, because you can't volunteer if you don't know the truth. You can't voluntarily interact with a lie because you don't know. You're getting one piece of information and you're going off of that, but it's not true consent. because you don't have all the information. It's deceptive. It's psychological coercion. Yeah. And all that false humility and whatnot, it's just a weapon. So it's absolutely not in line with libertarian ideals, behaviors, or anything like it. From my own Christian perspective, my Edgar Mills, it's what I would compare to being prideful above the Lord. That, well, I say rejects God's truth, but you may be a narcissist, not necessarily reject God's truth, but you think you're above, like you know better. And so any humility that may have existed, or any authentic humility that is rooted in a worship of Jesus Christ, gets replaced with your own self-worship, your own prideful sin. That's the way I see it, from what little I know about the Bible and Christianity. Now I'm going to talk some about objectivism too. So, well, Ayn Rand defines real pride, right, as a recognition of your own highest value achieved through reason and honest effort. Through reason, which implies factual reason, and honest effort. There's nothing wrong with being proud of accomplishments. There's nothing wrong with achieving greatness here on earth and then acknowledging that, like, yeah, this is pretty great. Not higher than the Lord, but great. This narcissism and this tactic of false humility avoids reality completely because it's a lie. And a lie is not real. It's not reality. And this false humility demands or coercively demands unearned adoration, admiration, loyalty. And this narcissism, it sacrifices productive people and productive efforts, honest efforts, to one person's ego, to one person's pride, the narcissist. So the three pillars that I lean on for analyzing the world around me, which is Christianity, libertarianism, and objectivism. Those are the three pillars those are the three lenses I look through to analyze the events as they unfold. You know, those are the ways I look at things. They all three flat out reject, well, narcissism for sure, but also the tool of false humility. Flat out reject it. You can't strategically use false humility and call it being strategic. It's not. It's a lie. It's fake. That trait and that tool as a leader in leadership, they are purposely deceptive, and they will divide a team or a congregation. They'll destroy trust. They'll stifle productivity. And they even curtail your freedom to think and speak the truth. You all know you've had a boss out there that you could not speak the truth to for fear of losing your job. I know you have. And that trait and that tool, well, they feed on the insecurity of one, right? And a work culture or a church culture will start to, as opposed to rewarding genuine surrender and genuine efforts, they reward appearance or compliance over genuine substance. That's what that way, and that's what the narcissist wants. They want compliance, and even they want your worship, even if it's an appearance only, so that everybody else sees that you adore and worship. And they don't care about what you do in private as long as it doesn't affect everyone else. So good people, learn to recognize these traits. Well, the trait of narcissism especially. Now, there's a difference between being egoist and a narcissist. And I know you're going to say egotist, Edgar, but I'm saying egoist. And let me define egoist. Let's see. Sorry for the pause here. My phone is much slower. My phone's slow. All right, egoist is one devoted to one's own interest and advancement. So that, because I follow Ayn Rand and because I believe that Ayn Rand is correct, you can be devoted to your own interests and advancement as long as it's through honest effort, honest means, and that you acknowledge the others around you. Whereas a narcissist will use others around them to achieve status or whatever and not acknowledge. So, and a lot of women carry on about a lot of guys that have big ego. They're egotists. Well, egoist and egotist may be able to be used in place of each other. But you have to have some level of ego. Now we're getting into philosophy and stuff like that, but you want to be your best self for sure. And I firmly believe that if you are your best self, then you will be better for everyone else around you. So I think the word egoist gets a bad rap. I know that it gets a little bit of a bad rap, or it's not. It's often used in a negative way, and I think it can be used in a positive way. But a narcissist, I don't think that's negative. That's negative. I think you can be an egoist and you acknowledge and follow and believe that God and Jesus, you still worship God and Jesus. You just have a very healthy interest in what you do for success. So be careful about labeling those, right? If your pastor has a big ego, but he truly loves you, and he truly loves his congregation, and he truly loves Jesus, okay. But if he's a narcissist, that means he's willing to sacrifice you. He's willing to shit on you for his own ends, for his own image. So we have to be able to spot those red flags. All the ones I've been talking about, we got to spot them. And don't think you can't hold the church accountable. All right? You can hold the church accountable. You can hold your work accountable. It might mean you have to go find another job. But do you want to stand on integrity, or do you want to just continue trudging along? That's between you and your finances and the way you choose to live. But you can hold these people of authority accountable. And they can't stop you from speaking your mind. But make sure you got your shit together. We need to recognize the traits. We need to understand their roots. Now, understanding, we ain't going to know everybody's childhood and everybody's upbringing. We ain't going to know that. But we need to measure their behavior against the principles and philosophies that I talked about. Now, you might not be a Christian. You might not be a libertarian, and you might not be an objectivist. But those principles are rock solid. Whatever you call yourself, the principles are rock solid. And none of those principles can be broken, by the way. You can hold them accountable. And if your leaders don't live by these genuine virtues that each of these philosophies call for, which is what? I mean, just honest interaction. I'm going to say biblical servitude. If you're not a Christian, take biblical out and just servitude. Be of service to others. And then rational self-esteem. And that's what I'm talking about with egoists. Rational self-esteem. You can be proud of your accomplishments. Be proud of others. Build good, solid foundation of self-esteem. Yeah, those things right there. Recognize this behavior. Expose the behavior. And refuse to accept the behavior. And then we can build genuine relationships. We can build solid teams. And ultimately, we can build a healthy community. Yeah. That's what I got today, folks. I was inspired to do that one. I hope it was a good podcast. I hope you got something out of it. And I hope you examine the things I said against yourself first, and then and then others who you may feel like are in violation of this, these behaviors, or people who do you have a narcissist in your life, whether it be personal or professional or spiritual? Is there, do you? And then if so, how long are you willing to live that way before you make a change? I don't know. It's up to you guys. Yeah, it's up to you guys to parse that out, to analyze it, and make that change if needed. Yeah, that's it. That's what I had. I appreciate you all listening. Please look at all the websites, ospreyshootingsolutions.com, 2teamguys.com, thegentilpodcast.com, givesendgo.com/help a homie fund. Please look at all those things, and please support as you can. And as always, folks, I'm available. Reach out. If you got questions, comments, beef, reach out. I'm here. I'm always open for debate. I'm always willing to help if I can, in the scope and capacity that I am able. And I'm always open to hear new ideas. Take care of each other, good people. I love you guys.